RC Jim, and today I want to show you what's involved in installing a Lemon RX 10-channel receiver with stabilization and telemetry into this old Great Plains Trainer 40. Very special plane to me. It's the one my boys and I learned on, self-taught 25 years ago. Still flying today. In fact, literally flew it today at a couple flights. Very nice plane, beautiful flight characteristics. And so we're taking the old and we're mixing it with the new. The Lemon receiver is something that's compatible with DSMX and DSM2 transmitters, such as the Spektrum DX and NX transmitters, along with many others. I'll be setting it up with a Radiomaster, so you'll see all kinds of things here in the video today. But a very low-cost way to get into a very quality receiver with all of that telemetry and the stabilization if you want it. Let's have a look at what's involved in getting it into this plane. So the first thing that we need to do is to get this transmitter configured for this particular airplane. So we'll fire up our transmitter here. And we need to first off get the plane that we want. And flight simulator, that's certainly not it. So let's go here, manage models. And of course I'm working with a Radiomaster T16S here. So I got a Great Plains Trainer 40. That's the one that I want. So I select the model. Yeah, okay, switch. Okay, so we got a Great Plains Trainer 40. So we got the right plane. If you didn't have it already set up, you would obviously go here to manage models and you would say new model to create a new one. But we don't need to do that. So we got one in there. Your system settings should all stay the same. And when you created this, most likely you would have gone to a template or another plane that would have similar type stuff, and you'd start with that. But we'll go through all of the settings here just in case you're starting from scratch. So the model settings are the things that you'll need to be doing. So I press the model button over there. Let's see, let's go back. Okay, model, there we go. Okay, so in the model menu, of course you've probably already given a name and so forth. You then come down here to internal RF. You need to have the multi thing, so it's configured to be able to handle multiple different configurations, protocols as far as communication. We're picking the DSM because as you think about this Lemon receiver, it is compatible with DSM2 and DSMX, which are used by Spektrum and some others. So we want the DSM, and then I've done the X2F. Now the X is just the latter part of the DSM, so it's DSMX and then version 2F, which is the latest one. Now you might find that it will be compatible with a variety of different ones. If you go in there, you can see that you got DSM2 1F. Sorry, get that again. You got DSM2 1F, DSM2 2F, DSMX 1F, DSMX 2F, and automatic. But I found X2F works with this particular one. So that's all fine. Channel range, just make sure you got at least enough to cover what you're doing. I think I'm using, what am I using, 8 of them, 9 of them, something like that. Okay, for the receiver you need to have a unique number. So if you had picked a different number there, it would tell you that it's already been used. So you want to stick with one that's unique. Eventually you're going to bind it, but right now we're not going to do that. Okay, so just getting things set up at this stage. So go back, So we've got the model set up, and now we toggle across, and that's not a helicopter. Flight modes, you should have, well, I have 3 flight modes set up, and because I call them 1, 2, and 3, I use the 1, 2, and 3 rather than starting with 0. And in this, you're just simply assigning the switch. So I like using switch A for flight modes, which is up at the top on the side. So if you're setting those, you just press in, and it's got the name and all that type of thing. You don't need a fade in or a fade out, anything like that. Oh, we're on 0. 0, you won't have a place for a switch to assign because it's just simply the default one. But if I get down here to flight mode 1 and go in there, then you see I can select a switch. So this would just simply be a dash at the beginning. It would be like that. And so you press it in and you flick the switch that you want, and it shows that, that's the switch. So for flight mode 1, I want it to top, so SA with it up, and so I select that particular one. And you do that same type of thing for each of your flight modes. Okay, having that done, you then go across to the inputs. Now with the Radiomaster, you've got inputs, you got mixing, and then you got the outputs. So we start with inputs, and that's where we apply exponential, we apply you know, what percentage rate to use as far as the overall rate is concerned, and a few other bits and pieces like that. But it's also a place where we can set flight modes. And on the summary screen here, it's showing me the overall rate. Sorry. The overall rate, so 60, 70, and 80. That's the overall rate. So I'm using 60% of the deflection on the aileron for the low rates and 80% for the top rate. The input is from the aileron stick, and so you see that little picture of a stick, just like your control stick that you use. So it's saying it's just taking the actual input from the stick, and then it's applying the 60% to that. And then it's also showing over here that I've got exponential set at 50%. And so I've got 50, 55, and 60. So it's showing me a summary of the things and the names that I've given them. Over here, this is showing what flight modes it applies to. Now, what's an important thing in general when you are applying switches that change things along the way is to make sure that there's no setting that can take place that might turn things off and have no input. So if I had something here where the switch, say, was in the number 2 position and it didn't have this middle thing here, I flick in the number 2 position. Well, number 2 isn't included up there. Number 2 isn't included down here in the third one. And so I would have no aileron input. So for my flight mode 1, I say 0 or 1. For flight mode 2, I say only number 2. And for flight mode 3, I say 3 or anything bigger than that. And make sure all the bases are covered. So when we get in there to see how that's done, we edit here. So we see we got a name, we got a line name for it. So the overall input name is aileron. That's the general category. And this particular one for flight mode 1 is aileron 1. I can then tell it where it's getting the information from, so from the aileron stick. And I can pick for the end of this, when it's at its maximum travel, how high can it go? Well, it can only go to 60 rather than 100%. Okay, so that's what the weight is 60%. Offset would be if it's, you know, pushed one way or the other, which generally is not going to happen with something like an aileron. Trim would basically be doing that. You don't apply a switch to aileron because you always want your aileron to work, not just when a switch is flicked. And then I got 50% expo. Now the expo, I do have a choice here of a variety of different things, and the main thing that you'd be thinking about is whether to have expo or whether to have something that's custom. And if you go down there to custom, it allows you to pick a custom curve that you have made, and the curve is made by applying certain points on the line and deciding how far up or down each of those points are going to be. So you could maybe start out at a very low rate going up and put a point out there to establish what that low rate is, and then maybe have a constant new rate from that point to the end going up to the total. But fine to just have a standard set of exponential as well. But the neat thing about this radio is that it does do a great variety of different things, great capabilities that are there. Okay, in this, go back here. In this section down here where it's like a settings deal, you go into there, and that's where you're applying the flight modes. So I've clicked on the 0 and the 1 to apply 0 and 1. It says that the trim is going to work, so whatever trim I've got set on the that particular stick is going to apply, and I don't have to worry about the side. Okay, so that's one of those things. Now the question is, how do you create a second one? Well, what you do is you just simply get on the first one, press in there, and you copy it. And having copied it, then you can click it again and say insert after. Or not insert, it'll be paste after. Let's go ahead and copy it, and I'll show you. So I've copied it. Now then on the same place, I hit it again, and I've got paste after. So it'll take what I've copied and it'll paste it in as a new item in that same category. And so I'll have a new item, but everything is the same as the first item. But then I just go in and edit it and change the rate and change the expo and change the flight mode to make it what it suits, and that's all done. And then you just do the same thing for the third. Okay, similar thing with regard to the elevator. Nothing new there. Throttle, you don't have to do much with it. In fact, you could even not have it here in the input section. You could refer to the throttle from the stick later on. The main reason for having it in the input section would be if you wanted to do something weird with the throttle, such as having it start out less sensitive at the start and be more sensitive at the end, or the other way around, whatever it might be. But most of the time you're not going to do anything with it, so you really wouldn't have to have it there, but it's also not hurting to have it there. Okay, we then have the rudder, and again I'm applying the three different flight modes to that. I like to have those flight modes all on one switch, so I'm using switch A to affect everything, and so that way if I'm changing something, I can just simply flick one thing and get to that sort of setup that I want. So that's all there is to on the inputs. So we now go across to the next one, which is the mixes. And this is where we do things like the flaperons. Okay, so as you look at the summary here, you've got the overall rate. So we've altered the rate in the input section, so we're not altering it further here, so just leaving it at 100%. But then you notice this next symbol next to aileron. Now that little triangle with a C, that looks similar to this input thing here. And as you go back to that input thing, you can see there we had the picture of a stick. So here we're taking the input from the actual stick, what its position is and that type of thing. But for this one here, we're taking what was worked out in this input section, and with all of the alterations that might have taken place for flight modes and exponential and various things like that, all of that being applied, that is the input then for this mixing. And so I then say, well, okay, in this first situation, I just simply want it plain, just ordinary aileron, and not modifying it further. But I then, with my flaperons, I then have the second one where I want to alter it when I flick the flap switch. Okay, so I've named it flap. The source, again, is that what's worked out in the input section. So I'm working with that. But then I'm applying an offset to it. And the idea of an offset is that as you think about that curve that was there with the flaps, go back here with the aileron. If I go in there and I edit that, you see this curve here. Well, that middle point on the curve, it was with the aileron just totally level, you know, even with the wing not affecting anything. But if I'm having flaperons, what I'm doing is the aileron's going down a bit, and then it's going to work from that new position. The initial position is offset to a certain point, and then it's going up and down from there. So that's what I'm doing with this mixing over here for the aileron, is I'm applying an offset. And so with this offset, in terms of how much, you actually start out with it something very, very low and just simply get everything in place. So you might just start out with a 10% offset there, something like that. But then after you've bound your radio to the plane, then you get everything hooked up and you have it all connected and everything. And then you get into that offset. You get down here and you click on that, and you alter this, and you watch the control surface while you do that and get it in the position that you want it, and that's what you use. Now that's better than putting something big in there and having the thing actually try to push that aileron farther than it can go and breaking something. Okay, so start out with it low. Now you might be tempted with this thing as you go down into the settings area here. You've got some options, and let's start at the bottom to begin with. If I was doing normal flaps, I would apply a slow up and a slow down, and what that will do is it makes the control surface move slowly rather than an instant change. You know, and normally with flaps, if you got electric flaps on a full-size plane, they gradually go down. And the advantage of that on your radio-controlled plane, or even a real one for that matter, a full-size one, is that it gives you time to correct if it's affecting the pitch of the airplane or doing something strange. It gives you time to react to it. Plus it looks good. So anyway, normally with flaps you would do that. But in this particular case, because this mix is taking an input from the aileron, and that input has been modified by expo and overall rate, and then it's taking that and it's adding to that this thing setting from the flaps, and then the output is going to either go instantly, or it's going to go slowly, or it's going to go delayed. And when you're working that aileron, you don't want it to go slow and you don't want it to be delayed. You want immediate response to wherever you've got that stick. Okay? So don't put a time in there. You're going to have a problem if you do. So that should be 0. Okay, now going back up to the top, I mentioned about multiplex add. With that, you can add, multiply, or replace. So you could have this just be a multiplier that multiplies the output. You could have this be something that is sent in place of the information from the stick, or you can use it to just add or subtract to it. And this is what we want to do with the flaperons, is we want the aileron to work like normal, but we just want to add this offset to it so it'll work as normal from a new position. Okay, so add is what you want. Modes, you want all of the modes. So again, as you think about it, you don't want to have something to where something is not going to work if the switch is in the wrong position or something like that. So it applies to all modes. Trim is going to apply, so you have the option when you set trim to allow it or not allow it, and certainly we want it. And there's no warnings associated with this, and we want it to apply straight away, not to have a delay before the signal goes out, and we don't want it to be slowed down. We want instant response. Okay, so as you copy that to create the next one, the only thing that you're going to do is, well, I guess I didn't mention about applying the switch to it, but down here where you got switch, you just simply get on that, enter that, and then you can put the switch into the position that you want, and that highlights it. You press the wheel in, and that's applied that to that particular thing. Okay, you notice that you do have a little graph up there that shows you what's happening. The 10% would be the sub-trim that's applied, but it's then altering it accordingly. Okay, I've also got a separate servo for the nose gear, and so that means I need to apply that. So I've used channel 5 since I don't have separate flaps and I don't have a retractable landing gear on this. So I've used channel 5 for the nose wheel, and for that one you just simply need to take the input from the rudder. And again, it's what the input section has worked out, so it's applied the expo and it's applied the rates and that type of thing to it. And it's just taking that, and it's also sending that same signal to the nose wheel. If for some reason you've got the servo set up to where it goes backwards, then it's in the next section where you do that. Okay, so we've got our nose wheel. Now that brings us down to the second set of ailerons. So channel 6 is what we're using for that. And you would recall when we looked at the instructions, it said that when we have the conventional tail and dual ailerons, that channel 6 need to be used for the second aileron. So the first one again is just the normal aileron input. So as with the other aileron, we're taking the what's worked out in the input section, and we're not applying anything to it because this first one is with the flaps down. So no switch apply, just default, that's where that one is going to be. We then copy that, we paste it in after to then get this one, and of course it starts out being exactly the same as the other, but we alter this one. First off, we need to give a switch to it, so we get down to there, we select that, and then if we didn't already have that selected, we actually move the switch B to the first flap position, and that would put it there on switch B in the middle. We select that, and that's saying when the switch is in that position, this one applies. Okay, we then give it an offset, and you may recall that our offset for the other aileron was a plus 40%. So this one, because it's going to go opposite to what the aileron would be doing in this case, we need to make it minus 40%. Again, down here in the settings sort of thing, we got add for the multiplex, that's going to be the default. All of the modes, trim is going to be applied, and we don't want any slow up or slow down. Okay, we then just go back and do the same thing for the other aileron, and or not the other aileron, the other flap setting for the aileron. Only in this case, switch B is down, and we got a minus 60%, minus 65% for the value, which again is just opposite of what the other one was. Now, again, I emphasize that when you first do this, use very small values, and then you come up with these larger values when you can actually see the aileron and the aileron working with and without the flaps being put in. Because when you get to your high rates and also full flaps, you don't want it to be breaking something, you know, if you push the aileron stick all one way or the other. Okay, so that's our ailerons. We then stabilization. Okay, so we just have the input for the stabilization here. It's just taking it straight from the switch. So I've just applied a particular switch to it. The source is switch E. So this switch would be whether or not the thing is going to be active and working. So we want it working all of the time, and the thing that we want to make it work is switch E. So that's the stabilization and the stabilization gain. We just simply want to put the dial, the S1 dial, in there. So we've given that for the source, and everything else is just as it is. Okay, then that's basically it, because we've done our nose wheel, we've done the ailerons, and we've got the stabilization and the stabilization gain in there. So we can now move on to the outputs, and so we move across there to the next one. And so this is going to give us all the things that we've got there in the mixing. The basic thing that you're doing here on the outputs is applying reversing, where you see these X'd over arrows. That's where it's been reversed. And to reverse something, you just go into that section, edit it, and you just click this inverted button here. So when the button is clicked and the thing is over there, that's just saying that that channel has been reversed. So as you can see here, the signal coming out is opposite to the signal coming in. Okay, and that was just simply to get it to go the right way. So we've got those in there. And I might say that with regard to the stabilization being on or off, I like to have all my switches pushed away from me in the default sort of setting. Everything's safe and ordinary. And so I see the safest position for stabilization to be stabilization off, because stabilization is something that could add something further to what's going on that potentially could mess things up. So my default position is going to be off, so I've got off away from me. In my particular case, I've got it on a 3-position switch, and so I have, if you go back, let's see, we go back to the mixes and we go down to stabilization, edit, SE. With a stabilization, it's going to be looking for a 100% sort of value for it to be on. And so when I got the switch up, it's in the 100% sort of thing. That's what's being sent to the receiver. And I've got it set to where he pushed away, it's not on. Halfway, it's still not showing 100% there. But when it goes to 100%, then stabilization is on. Yeah, let's see, is that everything? Okay, so we got our outputs. Curves is where you'd create that curve if you wanted to define the points for using that instead of the exponential. Global variables we won't worry about. Logical switches we don't need. Special functions, timer resets, and the throttle cut override. We put those in there. Nothing new or different about that. And telemetry is where the various things can get put in. Okay, so that gives us the basics as far as having the transmitter ready to go. So now we need to work with the plane and the binding and so forth, and getting the stabilization configured. Before we get our receiver installed in the plane, we want to do a few things as far as setting things up with the receiver itself. Now the first thing that we can do is bind it to our transmitter. And with that, of course, you'll have to put some power onto the receiver. I'm just using a separate battery for that. You can use the ESC hooked up to a normal battery, or you can use a UBEC with a battery, which is like the BEC that's in the ESC, only without the motor control. And those are quite inexpensive and quite handy. So anyway, have your transmitter handy, so like an arm's length away. You don't want to have it right up against the receiver. And we power up our receiver, and we've got a bind button on there. That's the simplest way to do it. So you can see here that you've got 3 buttons, a B, a C, and an F. Later on we'll be working with these lights up here. It starts out with 3 green ones, 1, 2, and 3, and then 3 red ones, R1, R2, and R3. The C button is what we're going to be using for setting up stabilization, but the B button is what we're going to bind with, and a little bit along the way we're going to set fail-safe with the F button. So that just shows you the layout of things on the 10-channel receiver. And so it's a little bit harder to see when you're looking at it because it's all translucent plastic. But there's the bind button, the C button, and the F button. These 2 things here, this is for the satellite connection if you got a satellite receiver. And that one there is for telemetry to pick up sensors, such as a voltage sensor. The A, E, and the F are pots that we'll be using to adjust the gains for aileron, elevator, and rudder. Okay, so for binding it, we want to first of all get our transmitter ready to go. So I'm using the Radiomaster T16S. And so we make sure we've got the right model in there. So I've got a Great Plains Trainer 40 already set up, so that's all good. So I hit the model button off to the side. Okay, model. Okay, so I press the model button, and we have the plane name and so forth, but I want to get down here to internal RF. And that should be set for multi-DSM, and I've found that what works for me is X2F, so that's saying DSMX and the 2F version of that. And then we're going to go down to, first off, making sure that we got a unique ID. So if I had something in there that I already have used for another plane, it's going to say, hey, it's being used. So I need to come up to a unique one. I've got the unique one in there, so select that, and we get the bind ready to go. Okay, so I now move this an arm length away, and get the receiver here where we can see it nicely. And what we're going to do is plug in the power. Make sure you got the brown on the bottom, and the you got BEC1, BEC2, and throttle. Okay, so if you got an ESC, you'll be plugging it into throttle. If you're just hooking up a battery directly, BEC1, and if you want a redundant one, BEC2. And the neat thing about that is that you can't have 3, you can have 2, but either the power going through the ESC or the power coming from a separate battery. But then you can also have a backup battery. And what will happen is if the voltage of the power being supplied over here on this side gets lower than the voltage that's being provided by the backup, it'll switch to the backup for the power without you having to do anything. So that is a fantastic thing to have in a receiver as far as having that redundancy to allow you to use the normal ESC or whatever, but to have the battery backup should something fail over here. But anyway, since we are doing this, we'll just do BEC1, and then we want to bind it, so we just hold this in until we get some flashing happening. Okay, got the fast flashing happening. Now I press the bind on the transmitter, and you can see it slowed down, then it gave me a brief green blip over there, and that's saying that it's bound. Now the next thing that we want to do is we want to set fail-safe. Now you can leave it in the factory default way with just simply, if there's a failure to where the receiver is not receiving a signal, it will just simply stop sending pulses to the servos, and they just sit there in their last position. Okay, so you could do that, but I feel a little bit more comfortable to have the user set fail-safe, and so with that, I just simply have everything set the way that I want it. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to neutralize the controls, and I'm also going to add in the flaps. Get up here, so I'm going to add in the flaps. Okay, so I got that in there, and that's, you know, it slows the plane down a bit, and so if it crashes, maybe it'll hit a little bit less hard. But it gives me something that I can test and really know that it's working. You might want to put in a little bit of rudder to, you know, turn the plane, because if you've lost signal, maybe turning it is going to help. So let's do that. We'll have flaps, and we'll give it just a tiny bit of rudder. Okay. So I'm going to set this over here. Okay, so what I want to do is I'm going to be pressing the F button. I need to do it within 3 seconds of powering it up, but no more than 60 seconds. Okay? So I'm going to plug this in. I'm going to then get my throttle, or the rudder the way that I want it. I've already got the flaps the way that I want it. I want it in mode 1. Everything else, yeah, the throttle is cut. That's all fine. So I'm going to have it set just like that. So between 3 and 60 seconds after I plug this in, I need to do that. And then when I have it in that position, I'm going to press this F button. Okay? And I'm going to hold that down until I get a green LED. So let's do that. We plug in the power.
Telemetry recovered.
1001, 1002, 1003, a little bit of rudder, hold in the F button. Got a green LED, and let it off. Okay? So that's as simple as that. When we plug all the servos in, we can test that as to it all working. Okay, so having set the fail-safe, we are now ready to do the stabilization. And for that, we don't have to have the transmitter on. You can set that aside. We're just going to work with our receiver. Okay, and so with this, what we're going to do is we're going to be using the C button. And there's a kind of a protocol that we need to follow here with regard to what does what. What we want to do is set the configuration that we have in our plane. So it's going to be flashing lights at us, the R1, R2, and R3. And we're going to be holding down the C button. It's going to flash these lights. And we'll need to press the C button, give it a double tap to indicate what sort of configuration we got. So in this particular case, we've got an aileron, each aileron plugged into a separate channel. So it's not how many ailerons you have, it's how many channels are being used to control the ailerons. And we've got 2 of them. Okay, we've got a normal tail, and so we're going to want R1, R2, and R3. Now, with this one, there's a bit of a complication in that we can't set all 3 of those at once. What we're going to have to do is set R1 and R2 first, turn it off, and then do it again, putting in R3, and that's going to add the R3 to the 1 and 2. And that will be confirmed by the red lights coming on. So let's go ahead and do that. Now, before we can do our thing with the power and the C button, we need to make sure we've got a bind plug plugged into channel 9. Okay, so you plug the bind plug in there. Having done that, we can then hold down on the C button. So we press that in at the same time we press the button. We got the flashing. We got 1, 2, onto, and we do a double tap. Okay, and give it time to register. Okay, so now you see we got two lights lit up, and the green light has to do with the fail-safe, saving that that's on. Okay, so now we need to add number 3. So press then, same time we put on the power. 1, 2, 1 and 2, and 3. Tap, tap. Okay. Now you see we've got all 3 lit up. So that's indicating that we've got that configuration that we're after. R1, R2, and R3 of dual aileron normal tail. So that's all configured and ready to go. So with that, we're ready to install the receiver in the plane. So having the radio all set up, we now need to get everything plugged in. So keep in mind that you've got to follow the protocols, you know, so left aileron channel 6, right aileron channel 2. These things are just taken care of, but that's the key thing there. In my case, I've also got a nose gear, and I've put that on channel 5. So you just, as you think about how you've got it set up, you need to plug in all your cables. I've got the cable to tap into the battery voltage on this spot there. Again, make sure that you got it in the right connector, because that's the same size connector as the satellite receiver connection. So make sure you put it there. And then, of course, this is the other aileron here. I've got it with all of the cables in that way to get them out of the way, to where I only have to dodge the those things with that one. And so we get them in there. I like the idea of transporting planes with the wings on, just because of the fact that if I was transporting this with the wings off, I'd be having to pull this thing out every time, get it in there, get the cables stowed away and all, which is not terrible, but kind of nice to be able to avoid that. And this particular one here, I'm trying to help the antennas stay out of the way by having this one tucked down in there. And actually I want to bring that around the other way, I think. Okay. Naturally you want to double check to make sure your brown is on the bottom for all of them. I've already done that for those other ones there. Okay, so we got this one going down through here, and Dr. Jim is going to get in here with his forceps to grab a hold of that guy. I see you. And the finger's getting in the way. Okay, that's the one that I want. And we'll let these stay on the outside of that. And just make sure that you got everything in there really snug and nice. Okay, and we're going to get this over the other side of that. Okay, putting our antennas into antenna tubes. And while a person could dab some glue on there, I want to be able to take them in and out. So I'm just going to use a bit of tape to hold it in place, which I've got here someplace. Shot. This one through the side here is a bit tricky in that I don't have any of the tubes sticking out this way. It would have been good if I would have glued it with the tube sticking out to where I could just wrap tape around it. But in this particular case, we will put a little bit of the tape up there and then get it stuck down all the way down to where the wire starts. See, I like my forceps. And bend that in just a little bit. And try to get it right up again against there. Okay. I think that's going to do a pretty good job of securing that. Okay. Sticking out a little bit farther, but that's not going to be a problem. With this other one, you can see I've got the servo tube where I've just drilled out one of these holes in the servo tray, and I've glued the tube into that hole there, and that allows me to just simply fit this down in there. And we'll tape that in place as well. It seems to have something in the bottom of that. Just run some wire down through it. I think I had a little bit of glue that went into it or something, so just cleaning it out using a wire. Okay, so now we can put the antenna wire into there. Get it down all the way, and we put a little bit of tape onto that one as well. Okay. That's got that up above there, so that's all good. That's out of the way. Got a little L-shaped tray that this is in, so I'm making sure it's right up against the edge of that. Okay, having got that in place, we now want to verify that everything is working in the right direction. So we're going to turn on our transmitter. Transmitter is on.
Welcome to HTX, flight mode 1, throttle cut, flaps
got
down.
the right plane. Turn the power on for the receiver. Okay, it's showing our 3 red lights, which indicate that we've got the dual channels for the ailerons, plus the conventional tail. The green light indicates that the fail-safe is set to a user set sort of thing, and the red light down here says that we've got a connection with the transmitter. So, what I'm going to do is arm the stabilized mode, and we'll see if it's doing something. Yeah, it is. Now I'm going to crank up the gain. I got the gain down a bit, so I crank up the gain all of the way. And right now I got all the pots in the center position, 12 o'clock. It's awfully hard to show on the camera just how this works, but when I lift up, get the wing to where it's a little bit more out of the way. When I lift up, I want the elevator to go up. And you'll find that if you just make a tiny movement, it's real hard to tell what part of the response is from moving up and what other part of the response is for the sudden stop after moving it up. So if you can do a longer movement, which I can't really do here in the bench too well, but if you can do a longer movement, then you're looking at the part before you stop as to what's happening. So that's going up. The other thing you can do is you can feel the control and feel what's going on. So it should be going up at the start and then coming back down at the end. So that's what that's doing. Then I want to look at the tail and have the same thing. And that tail is going the wrong way. Now the next question is what's happening with ailerons. Ideally you'd want this on the plane, but to do my adjustments it needs to be off the plane, so I'm going to try and do it like this. Yeah, those are much more obvious. Okay, so when I turn it to right, it looks like these are opposite as well. So as you think about what's happening here, if the wing was on the plane and I've got the left wing in my hand over here and I pick up on it, then that left aileron should go up. And it's going, you notice the initial movement is down. That's the important thing. Okay, and that's the wrong way. So we've got to reverse the rudder and the aileron. Okay, so the way we reverse it is very similar to what we did for setting the airplane type. We use a C button, but this time we don't have the binding plug in place. So we hold the C button in for about 3 seconds, and we get the flashing happening. We let it go, and now we got one thing flashing, and then 2, and then 3. So it's using the G1, G2, and G3. Okay, now this time what I'm going to do is that as you look at the instructions here, G1 is aileron, G2 is elevator, G3 is rudder. So it just simply matches the pots up there. So you got aileron, elevator, rudder. So we're going to start out by reversing the aileron. So that's going to be the G1 flashing, the first green light. Okay, so I'm going to hold in the C button, wait for things to start flashing, okay, and then I'm going to press and press. Okay, so that's reversed the one, and that's left the green light lit up for number 1. Now we need to do the same thing for number 3. So I hold in the button here until we get the flashing happening. Okay, that's 1, 2, 3, and a double press. We have to sort of look, but yes, there are 2 lights lit up, 2 green lights. So the 1 and 3 green lights are lit up there with a blank in between the 2. So let's reverse those 2. So we should now be able to test it and see if that works. Yeah, just verifying that's the case. Rudder. Yeah, that's doing the right thing now. It's going up when I press it up that way. And ailerons, picking up the left wing should raise the left aileron. And yes, that's now doing the right thing. So looking at the initial movement when you make the twist, the initial movement is up on the left. So that's got our direction all established. So having done that, we're ready for a test flight. When we go to test fly it, we're going to start out with a stabilization off. And I've got it on this switch over here, you may recall. So we'll have it off as we get started.
Flaps up.
Put the flaps back up. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, right, left. Yeah, just correct, making sure that everything else is in the right direction. So, for the first test flight with this, when you take off, have the stabilization off. Get it up to a comfortable height, and then flick the stabilization on. As you do that, get up some decent speed going. And just thinking about what I've just done there, as you doing this work on the plane, have the prop off. You know, that's a safe thing to do. And you probably know that already. But anyway, get up a decent speed going and give it a bit of a flick with the aileron and see whether it just simply moves or whether it oscillates. If it oscillates, you got too much gain. So you can back off with the dial. That's given that you've got at least an 8-channel transmitter. If you don't have the 8-channel transmitter and you just got the 6-channel transmitter, then what you need to do is to land and turn the dials back a bit. Now you can also have a look at what happens with a flick up and down with regard to the elevator, and try a flick left and right with the rudder. Okay, and that will initially give it a flick, you know, in the yaw sort of mode, even though eventually it'll come around and do a roll as well. But nonetheless, do those and make sure you don't have any oscillation. And if with any of those you've got oscillation, then you need to back off either on the wheel up here with the gain or on the pots on the receiver. So I've done all of that with this plane already. So I've just gone back through it again for you today, but flew it yesterday. Does a great job, and yesterday was a really blustery day, so I was quite happy to have the stabilization working, and still was able to do my stunts and the various things. Although if you're doing stunts, you can turn it off if you want, you know, that's totally fine. But I tend to have the stabilization set on a lower level anyway, so it's not really doing too much as far as keeping me from doing the maneuvers that I want to do. Well, here we go. We've got it all set up, ready to go. In fact, more than ready to go. Actually flew it today. Had 2 nice flights with the plane. Flying beautifully, good control. I've got the pots all in the 12 o'clock position. And I backed off a little bit on the gain, and rather than having it right in the middle, it was just a little bit less. Today was a really windy, gusty day, and it really helped a lot handle those bumps and things that are happening along the way. So I trust it's been helpful to you, and if so, hey, subscribe. That'll keep all of these things handy. I'm producing videos all the time, getting requests about things, and you know, some of them I just simply answer straight out, but many of those requests and comments lead to producing more videos. I'm also always investigating things and looking into new ideas and stuff, so you definitely want to be a subscriber. And of course, have a look at the other things on our website. We've got a lot of good things there. So you have a great day and enjoy your flying.